Ladies and gentlemen, you are now tuned in to the Rate Limited podcast with your host, Eric Provencher of RepoPrompt. We also have Adam Larson, aka Gosu Coder on YouTube, and myself, Ray Fernando. We are aiming to be the 5-star podcast, so make sure you go ahead and rate us highly there on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and your favorite podcast show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. We have a bunch of stuff packed in from Opus 4.7, Kimi K2.6. Things are shipping nonstop, and we're really excited to get back to you here this week. Eric, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ray. I mean, it's been a little bit of a gap since our last episode, and obviously, like, the space doesn't stop. It's been the month of Anthropic shipping, it seems like. Oh boy, Opus 4.7 has been, I think, probably the most divisive model they've released so far, coming hot off the heels of the Mythos model. So I know, Adam, you had some work featured and you got to give it an early shot there with Opus. I want to hear your impressions. You probably spent the most time with the model out of all of us, and you've been talking to people who've been integrating it directly. I want to hear exactly, like, what are your thoughts? How are developers you're working with feeling about it, and like, where do you think we're going as an industry with this? Like, is the upgraded number like worth the number or something else? I want to hear, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, maybe taking a step back here for a second.
Mm-hmm.
There's only been a few times where I've actually been like blown away in a model upgrade, and Opus 4 to 4.5 was such a big jump for me.
Mm-hmm.
4.5 to 4.6 felt like a nothing, kind of like 4.6 to 4.7 it is definitely all over the place, because there are times that it feels good, and there are other times it feels like it's degraded. So I've started actually asking around to other people that I work with, and all of us pretty much unanimously have a hard time deciding if we like it better or worse than 4.6 or 4.5, and that's kind of a bad sign. I've attempted it for like some very large, new features, and I feel like there's things that it has failed on that I feel like 4.5 would have succeeded on. And I've actually got some tests up and running on my other computer over there, where I've actually got two side by side running with 4.5 and 4.7, because I'm curious, like, if it's just like maybe I've overemphasized how good 4.5 was. But in general, I'd say I've probably been more neutral on 4.7 than I have been on like the other ones. I don't feel like it's anything more than what I saw going to like 4.6. And actually, in some places, like I said, I think it's actually degraded. I was talking to one engineer today, and we were chatting, and both of us like were just blown away with 4.5. And we were talking about how 4.7 actually has had us start considering using the GPT models. And
wow.
he was a big Opus person. He's pretty much fully shifted over to GPT models for execution, which is something that he would have not thought about doing. So I think GPT is gaining some progress, at least in my group of folks.
Wow. Yeah. And I know, Ray, you're like a huge Claude buff, so I'm curious, like, have you been, pushing it and seeing what it can do for you?
Yeah, here's the funniest thing that I've gotten as far as number one takeaway is that you have to gaslight the model back. Let me explain. So it is interesting that sometimes it can be really good at following and over prescribing whatever you're writing down. But I like to watch the thinking traces, and I've been seeing them a lot inside of Droid. And I do max thinking because I just really want to see what this model is like outputting. And it's like, I don't want to do this, but I should be doing this because the user keeps telling me I should do this. Like, this is just done, but like, I need to do an additional pass because X, Y, Z. And I was like, what if I take away all of my instructions and just tell it to do its own self-discovery? And it comes to the same conclusions that I end up going to, but I now have to be that manager who has to kind of like take the horse to water.
Oh, man.
And just say like, oh, hey, here's some water. And like, I'm looking at the horse. It's like dead thirsty. It doesn't want to drink water. And it's like, let's just go over here. Like, let's just get away from the desert and let's just kind of go to a different area. Okay. Like that's the way I have to treat this model. And it's really good. So this is the biggest discovery that I've made, is like, I actually have to sort of prompt less, give less context, give less everything, because the model is super hungry to want to go And it could be the Droid system prompt. It could be, that's kind of why I've only had a lot of time inside of Droid and Cursor right now. And it's maybe just the fact that those harnesses maybe prefer or have additional instructions to go grab some more information, within the context to build it on itself. So that was an interesting insight though. And even on the web too, even when I tell it to be really like when I just dump a bunch of information, it tends to not want to think as much. When I give it less and I say, hey, go find your things, it will do a lot of time, because I had an issue on the web different from all of this where I was looking into some health stuff and it like just didn't want to look at any of the information. I give screenshots, I give a bunch of information from the doctor, and I was like, wait, like it missed very critical details that my doctor was actually calling out. So
I wanted to ask you about that, Ray, because like I've had that same problem where sometimes it like almost refuses to do what I'm asking it to do.
Yeah.
So it seems like you've kind of figured out a workaround on that. But there are other times it's like flawless. So like I can't quite put a finger on, like sometimes it just ignores something you tell it, or like it just outright refuses to do what you want it to do. So it sounds like, am I right in assuming that's what you're seeing, Ray?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have no clue where. Like it's just so random. It's like
So I've done some like forensic analysis on some of my prompts with it, and I like have Opus like look through the prompts and like ask it like where it gets stuck on certain things. And like, so I mean, I have this orchestration workflow, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But one of the things in it is that it requires like a little quick scan to get an informed prompt for like getting the whole process started. And I was talking to Opus about it because it was skipping that, or it was just like going through and it was skipping the whole workflow and just doing everything. And I was like, well, why are you skipping this? And it turns out like it wanted to make sure that the prompt that it got started with was super well informed and like had to be like super detailed, and it didn't want to miss anything. And so like you can see like there's like all these like little like scuffs and little like paper cuts where the model just like goes deep down a chasm to try and like meet a criteria, and it like overindulges and over explains its like its rationale for it. And that's why, like, to your point, you really have to like kind of carefully guide it. And I find like if you give it a clear task and don't really tell it how to do the task, it does really well. But if you're like, do the task this way, that's when it doesn't like it. And I think that's like the weirdest thing about this model. And actually, like, one of my favorite things about the GPT models, to your coworker's point, Adam, is that they listen to instruction. You tell, do it like this, it'll be like, got you, let's do it. And when you have clear workflows, that's like a huge difference. But I want to talk a little bit more about design as well. Claude, they just released the Claude design tool. And I mean, I've been using it for front end work and revitalization. And this thing has an impeccable taste. Like, this is a really, really tasteful model. And like, it's weird. It's like a wild horse. Like, someone on X was talking. I was talking to them about it. Like, it is harder to steer. I'm listening to the Acquired podcast. They were talking about the Ferrari episode, and they were talking about the F40 from like the, I think, late 80s, late 90s, and that car is like a car that you don't get in the car if you don't know how to drive it, and if you take the wheel and you don't know what you're doing, you're going to crash. And I have the same feeling about Opus 4.7, whereas like the older 4.5 and 4.6 was like a Honda Civic, where you just say, let's go, and it goes. It's not going to get you there fast, it's not going to get you there like necessarily like in record time, or like with record quality. But 4.7 is like, when you can drive it, you're going to fly. If you can't drive it, off the cliff for you. So I'm curious, have you found, like, back to the design part a little bit, that like it's been a big step up for you? Has it changed anything about your workflows? I'm curious, Adam, if you have thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes. I actually really also like the whole Claude design, like ecosystem that they put out. Speaking of that, but in general, like Opus 4.7 is really good at design, and honestly, the Claude models have always been very top notch from that regard. The only counter I would have is I've actually been falling more on, when it comes to like image generation, which to me is a big part of design. I've been actually using a lot of Gemini lately for that, which I know that the ChatGPT model that just came out too is also really good, but I haven't tested that one as much. So like right now, I actually have a Claude design project open up over here. Gave it a very simple prompt, uploaded like a logo of a business that I'm starting with my kids. And it's amazing. Like, it gives you like everything that you need. And then I can take that, feed it into Opus, and I get a perfectly designed e-commerce storefront that we can run. Like, it's really good. So I have no complaints on it from that regard.
All right. Yeah. And what about you, Ray? Have you been like pushing the design limits on this thing?
Yeah, I did a full on live stream. What I did is I took an existing design template from one of this place called aura.build. And there are a lot of really good templates. So I just grabbed a couple screenshots, put the HTML in it because I really like the font and the interactive design. It's just a lot faster to describe it. And the thing that really kind of blew my mind, I just told it to go full in, when it, all the questions that it asks me, I just, answer them in detail. And like it, I said, do you want to build one scene in terms of like a block landing page, but the blog page? And I was like, build it all, build the about me, build it all. It gave up all these details, and it's like it felt like I hired a 100K designer to sit down with me just off that screenshot and just those questions that it would ask back and forth. Because I have sat with the designer over, like designers in general, at these big Fortune 500 companies, and I have sat with them also, like even recently with the Droid folks, and they ask similar questions, about like your feel, your fonts, and these types of things, and I thought that was really insightful. And then how they take that work and what Claude does to give that to you as a tool was really cool. The most amazing part was then telling Claude to give me a prompt to hand off to other agents that would encapsulate the entire conversation for the design. And it gave me a really extremely succinct, like 500-line document that has every single little detail in it. And that sending it off to like Google Gemini 3.0 Flash with Google Stitch was able to recreate everything that it did just from that small set of instructions.
Wow.
Which I found really, really incredible. And because I don't know if you all realize this, you can hit your limits super fast within like 5 prompts. I'm on the 20x max plan. I already used 20%. I was like, oh my God.
Crazy.
I hit my limits daily. Like I'm always hitting my limit. But let me ask you guys something. How do you think this impacts designers as a whole? Like there's a lot of companies too, like Figma took a big hit in the stock market.
I think this is the cursor moment for design. I think this is that they can sort of like put in a lot of their work, templates and things, and then hand it off to the engineers and say, this is kind of what I'm thinking, like, and just start making like factories of ideas that they have,
I don't know. I find the thing about design, and maybe like eventually Claude Design, like if they keep investing in it, we'll get there. I think the reason people use Figma is like the control, the like collaborative nature of it. There's like a lot that is there, and the ecosystem around it is really rich. Like you're not like, you can use Figma without AI, but like Figma does have AI, but you can't use Claude Design without AI. And like, like you hit your usage limits or you hit your rate limits or you hit whatever, like you're not going to be able to continue working. Like that's just not like a way that like people can depend on. I think it's a fun. I think oddly enough, I think Claude Design is great for non-designers. I think probably some designers will enjoy using it, but I think you want a tool that is like a power tool for designers. And I'm a little skeptical that like just having like a blanket AI tool like this is going to just replace that whole way of working. Maybe we need less designers. Like we'll need maybe less software engineers if we have more AI, but I don't think it replaces the need for them. And someone who's not design oriented won't be able to kind of get the kind of results that you wanted, the consistency and the context needed to kind of make a really truly excellent design that meets all the criteria. Everything about design is like meeting trade-offs and delivering them in the right way. And if you just have someone trying to make a splash or a landing page, sure, but like when you're building a product that has a lot of things to consider into it, like you don't want to just hand that off fully. I don't know. What are your thoughts there, Adam?
Oh,
or go ahead, Ray. You had something to say for sure.
I want to propose something to you. I mean, because like there would be teams that would literally spend years making UI kits, right?
Yeah.
And so how close are we for that programmatic part, right? Because like I've worked with amazingly talented designers and then some amazingly talented engineers, and some of the best ones kind of had the blends of both skills,
of course,
and they have these variety of skills too. And then when everyone sits together in the room, this iteration is kind of crazy. And so they're able to translate the conversations between the design, engineering, and they're like, okay, since we do this pattern a lot, let's just make a tool for that. And that becomes something that's exposed in the API layer. And then that's basically what I'm thinking that would be exposed to an agent, right? But they were just thinking about this from a, design iteration phase, not necessarily from a, hey, like we have to think about an organization phase. They're just at this ground level being super creative and like, playing around with things, like even just drawing something on, your wristwatch or something like that, right? Calling these graphics engines and understanding the pipelines for how those are developed to make them like, the constraints are a small watch, a small display, small battery, that type of constraint really kind of made diamonds out of these rough ideas.
Mhm.
And so is this kind of that one layer that is starting to develop right now where like eventually this will be handed off to agents, and then eventually as a human you're just maybe have other humans you're coming into who have these different backgrounds. You can kind of start making your own frameworks, right? I don't know. Like,
Well,
just
if we
curious.
think about the evolution of design, back in the early days, it was like Photoshop, and then like you stitch together images, and then there were quite a few other things before Figma, and then Figma came around and then unlocked it. We think about where we are today, like there's different stages of experience that designers have. There are people that I would say are graphic designers. They can make a pretty picture.
Mhm.
That is not like the full extent of a designer.
Of course.
So what I kind of see, to your point, Ray, is maybe this is like the cursor moment, but it's the pretty design, but there's still the how do all the systems come together? How does the user interact with it? What are the things that actually need to be on certain pages? What should the micro interactions be, etc. That designers have to think through. And I don't see AI doing that, but it should be. The way I was trying to build it is like cursor's a tool for me to make code better. Maybe this becomes a tool for designers to be able to do token generation, like what padding should we have? What colors should we have? Like being able to iterate on that really quickly. But I still don't see it totally replacing, especially when you've got a complex application that's got, very, very clear like wayfinding and things that need to be like spot on, and you need to A/B test, should this button be here and how should it be presented and all that stuff. Like I don't see AI being able to cover what designers do there. But I could get on board with it being the cursor moment in the fact that this should make designers faster.
Well, I want to point out something you kind of mentioned there, which I think is like the split and the conflation of kind of UI and UX that a lot of people make. And like to your point, like I think the UX part of it is not solved, but a lot of the UI part maybe is getting there. I think there's a point to also lean on, which is when designers are making these UI frameworks and these UI things, a lot of what they're doing is setting up a language to kind of convey what the app should be consisted of. Like what are the building blocks of this app? And you have something that's consistent throughout different parts of the app, and you want to set up reusable pieces that engineers can use to kind of build on and build with. And I think AI makes kind of making the sub pieces a lot faster and maybe composing them a lot easier. But like when you're designing what the primitive should be, I think like you can iterate with AI, but you have to have an opinion. You have to have some way that you're conveying these trade-offs in terms of getting where you want to be. So hopefully that's making sense. But like I think there's still a gap somewhere, and there's always human judgment that's still needed, and no matter what AI workflow you're using, and I think this is no exception. So I'm always a little skeptical of we're gonna just replace all X with Y.
Same.
Have to be careful.
I do think the like startups, if you're just getting going, there's been
Yeah.
times that I founded companies and you'd spend $30,000 to $50,000 on trying to get your brand kit together so
Yeah.
that you could actually build with it. I don't need to spend that money anymore because
No, for sure.
So there is that level of it that I really do appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Adam.
But I think if you're already thinking in terms of putting together your brand kit, putting together what are your things, you're doing that work yourself.
Exactly.
You're it's not the AI is doing it. The AI is assisting you in making that.
Yeah.
And that's empowering, of course, because that wasn't something you could do before.
Exactly.
And I feel the same way running my business. Like I don't have the funds to pay for a designer to do that work, but I still think like you are still taking on that role. It's not the AI doing it.
Yep. Totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if you throw
yeah.
that brand kit or that logo into the GPT image thing, can it generate a brand kit for you as well? I'm just really curious. Yeah.
I mean, they could possibly do something. You'd
We'll
have to
find out
iterate
by
with
the end of
it.
the show.
I think the thing for me with design and image models is that iterating with them is always super weird, and like you've so little control over like what details it's going to come up and edit in the next one. Like you can guide it, but then the longer you go, the more lost it gets, and it's always a mess. So I actually prefer something like Claude Design for that work. But yeah, that's me.
Yeah, you literally have to like download the image, start a new context, and like because the first iteration is always the best, and then from there it's downhill. So I literally have like when I'm working through some, I'll have like 15 or 20 chats, just literally restarting the chat over and over again. Because you're right, it'll slowly degrade any edits you do, and then randomly it'll be a totally different image. Like I didn't ask for that at all. Like that wasn't the world.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to Kimi 2.5. Sorry, 2.6. New model just released. And on the benchmarks, this model is doing incredibly well, passing Opus 4.6, in some cases GPT 5.4, which is like crazy. Like I like we wouldn't have seen a Chinese model like this come out and do so well. I did enjoy Kimi 2.5 in some cases, not for coding, but like running OpenClaw was an interesting use for it. I'm curious, like I know Ray, you spent some time with it. What are your initial thoughts? Like, how are you using it, and how do you feel it compares?
It's really funny. I took that from Claude Design and exported like this 500 line, really detailed, design instruction type of thing. And I tried it in a couple different places. So on Kimi on the web, Kimi with the agent swarm, in Droid, the extra high thinking. And the goal was just literally to just take those instructions and generate, the blog page with these details and stuff like that. And surprisingly on the web, it only got to about like 60 to 70% of the job done. There were a lot of details missing. There was a lot of nuance for like light mode and dark mode, where the other models really captured it really well. In a really funny comparison though, I said, let me just put Composer 2 on it from Cursor and just have it do the same instructions. 4,000 lines of code later, like 5 minutes, all came out, everything working, like light mode, dark mode, all the details. And what was surprising is that even mobile mode worked. And that didn't work for any of the Kimi models on the web, even with the Agent Swarm, which I thought was going to spend some more time doing that. I thought, man, this is weird because Google Gemini 3.0 Flash with Google Stitch completely nailed it too. So there's something there because Composer 2 only has 200K token context window too. I was like, huh, really fascinating.
Yeah, and when you're using Composer 2 though, like, did you monitor like how it's splitting up work? Like, is it using a lot of subagents to do work, or is it just kind of doing scouting with subagents? Like, I don't know if you've looked at what it's actually doing.
It just seemed to generate code pretty fast. It didn't seem to spawn off a lot of subagents. It just kind of sequentially just went, Yeah.
So I have a note on that actually that I don't have data or anything, but like the thing that I think we're seeing a lot with Western labs, especially with Anthropic and OpenAI now, like Cursor with this model, is that they're getting quite good at post training and like the RL loops and all of this stuff where like you have like a goal and you sign off on something. And like building a website end to end is for sure like so deeply covered in those post training systems. But when you pull up a model like Kimi 2.6, which is like an instruct model that's like come out, like it has some, of that RL done, especially for tool calling, but it's not going to have the same degree of it as like, like Cursor put into Composer with like making sure that like these common tasks are so well covered and so well like integrated that the model just cannot stop without all of this being done. So I think a big part of it is that. But I'm curious to see like how Kimi kind of pushes on and learns on the post training. Like so far, it really does seem like OpenAI is like the best post training from everything we've been hearing in terms of the coverage, and it's why their models are like getting really scarily good at like a lot of stuff in terms of agent running. But I'm curious, Adam, have you had the chance to play with Kimi 2.6, and what are your thoughts on like this like post training around it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I have. The problem I've always had with Kimi models is how slow they are. They have a big hill to climb in my mind. Their models are just these big behemoths of models that typically get 20 TPS on average when you're actually running it. So it makes it really hard for me to want to use this model as my daily driver. I also tend to agree with you. I do have some benchmarks I run based on like tool accuracy, and I would say like Kimi K2.6 doesn't do that great on those types of runs. And I think a lot of it, to your point, is the other models are so trained to call tools accurately. In particular, in large agentic loops where there's multiple tool calls that are happening.
Mhm.
And while KimiK 2.6 is not bad, like in retrospect, if we were to think about it, like this model's performing amazing. If we had had this model a year ago, it's incredible. But the speed combined with, I'd say the speed combined with the cost is, while cheap, it's not the cheapest model.
Mhm.
But on the positive side, if you go onto OpenRouter right now, it is the #1 model as of today for coding, which is, the numbers don't lie, so people are liking it. It's just a little too slow for me.
I wonder, do we have data on where those tokens are going? Like what app is driving them?
You know what? I wonder if I can find that. That would be amazing to figure that out.
Yeah, sometimes people run promos with free models as well, and they kind of top the charts too, so it's hard to say. I mean, if it's on OpenRouter, it's probably not free, so I'm not sure if that's the case, but it's worth looking at. I wanted to make another point. Oh, sorry, what was it, Adam? Yeah.
So #1 is Hermes Agent, which I've never heard of.
Yeah, you never heard of Hermes? Okay.
Mm-mm.
So that's like an OpenClaw competitor. That's not for coding, so that makes sense that like it's burning tokens.
#2 is OpenClaw. #3 is KiloCode.
Yeah.
And #4 is Claude Code. So there's some
interesting.
And #5 is Pi Agent.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's interesting to see people burning it like that. Yeah, I just on the tool calling point, I wanted to just come back on because you're saying it was doing a little bit poorer on your benchmarks there. Have you tested 4.7 on that benchmark, Adam? Have you seen
not yet, but I need to do that.
Yeah, because so for me, I run them with my tools with MCP, so it's not like the standard tools that like they ship in the Claude Code harness. And I find Opus 4.7 like regularly makes incorrect tool calls. Like it's not like often, but like once every session or other session, it'll make at least like one failed tool call and it recovers and it keeps going. But like it calls a tool that like just doesn't exist or isn't right or like to the way it's formatted. And I don't know if this is like a prompt issue in Claude Desktop, but I was using it in Claude Desktop the other day just in the chat mode. And I was doing some tax related stuff. And I noticed that it kept incorrectly invoking the ask user tool. It would end the chat and it would say, here, answer me this question. And it was just XML. And I was like, yeah, like it just didn't call it or something broke in the parser. I don't know if it's the model's fault or the harness's fault, but there's something sloppy about it in the way that it calls tools, I think, versus older models. It's a little unwieldy. So just want to call that out. Like it's not solved for everyone. Tool calling is still an evolving science, I think.
So one of the other things that I have a theory on, which could be incorrect on 4.7, is that I think it uses more context than 4.5 did. Yeah. And I would love to actually test this like definitively, but like I will do very simple tasks and my context window seems to fill up incredibly quick.
Well, there's two things here I just want to just touch on before you keep going. So one thing they did mention that they changed the tokenizer for 4.7, and so that the way that text is ingested is less efficient than with the older Claude models. And a part of that is that they want it to be more granular so it can be more sensitive to different tokens, which is better for accuracy. But at the same time, it means that the same text eats more tokens in your context window. And it's about 30% more in the worst cases, and sometimes even worse. Especially with white space, apparently each space is apparently an individual token. People did some tests with it. So that's kind of nuts. So sorry, keep going. I just wanted to make that mention.
I mean, you validated the theory that I've got that I did not know the answer to. So that was just that was something I noticed like over the last week. I'm like, I feel like I'm eating up my context window. I'm hitting my limits. I'm compacting more often.
It thinks way more too. Like they mentioned this, like the default is extra high, which is a new level they put for it. And you can see it reason. It just goes on and on and on and on with its reasoning. That's definitely a lot more than the older ones. I wanted to mention as well, they said that with 4.7, that high reasoning was the bare minimum you should run it in an agent, and that anything lower is not worth it. And it's funny they did that because then Copilot, they kind of set the max reasoning to medium on Copilot if you use it there. So you can't even if you're paying the top plan with Copilot, you can't even use the model as it's intended. So that's a bit unfortunate. And then they recommend extra high, and they say don't use max because max will overthink and use twice as many tokens. Very strange. It feels like they're figuring this out a little bit more. In some ways, it reminds me a bit of O3 last year that OpenAI released, which I love that model. but it had weird quirks like this. So just worth bringing up. Yeah. Any other thoughts there, Adam? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say most of my testing has been done in extra high because I heard some of the same similar things that they recommend that. I do know there are folks that I work with that swear by medium, which is also confusing. But I don't know. Part of it is we are limited in how much budget we have in a month, so we have to be a little bit strategic about how we like utilize our AI day by day. And the extra high is expensive. Like it will eat up your usage very quickly.
Now with that tokenizer too, you're just getting a 30% cost increase just out of the box with the same usage. It's nuts. Do you think you're going back to 4.6, Adam, for most work? Or are you switching to codecs, or are you going to stick with 4.7?
I've actually this coming week, I'm actually going to try the new like GPT models and try to just force myself to stay on those for a period of time. Like actually give it some good effort on it.
All right.
See how it goes.
As of this recording, the latest model is GPT 5.4.
Yeah. So we'll see. You know, we release episodes a couple days after recording, so things tend to change very quickly between when we record. So we'll have to come back in this episode, maybe slightly outdated by then. Yeah, I'm curious to see. And what about you, Ray? What are you feeling about 4.7? Are you going to stick to it, or are you going to go back? Or
I still like to want to play with it more. I'm just literally going max. Like I want to see the thinking tokens. I want to see what it's like thinking about. And compared to like Kimi 2.6, I saw Kimi 2.6 have these artifacts where it'll just keep doing these repetitive thinking, lines. So I don't know. That's just me though. I want to dig in. I don't mind paying more for those tokens. I get more insight in the model in terms of where it's trying to steer me. And then I get this back and forth with language that I can't get if the thinking trace isn't too long. But, if I do need to ship some software or something, I definitely bring it down a notch. But yeah, right now I'm just kind of playing around with Max and just going all the way in.
I would really recommend lowering it a little bit just because of the recommendations. And a part of it is that reasoning tokens use up the context window too. So like the more reasoning tokens are burnt, the less context window you have for like context to think to pull in and actually solve your problems. So like it's worth not overdoing it on the thinking, finding the right sweet spot. But it is interesting though that like, I don't know, like I bench these models. I've been benching them for a while. And all the previous Claude models tended to do better with more thinking on my benching. But Opus 4.7 is not that. And I've in fact noticed that just generally on default settings in Claude Code, which is extra high, it does a lot worse than older Opus models in my benching. It's the first one that like really deeply regresses. Like Opus was always like top 5 model on my bench. 4.7 is like, I think I saw it like down in the number 25 or 50. It was like really low in the list. So like it's been outranked by a lot of models on the things I'm measuring with it. So it's not all wins. All right. Let's move on to the next item, which is there's been some big news about Cursor and SpaceX joining forces. And it's interesting. Cursor is, like they've been kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, trying to make a business work out of AI coding. They were kind of first to market with their product and doing really well, gaining some early ground. But, they're squeezed by the costs of these tokens. And as people use more, it affects their bottom line. So they released Composer, and I think it's been a great hit. And to your point, Ray, it's been doing really well. But it's not like the state-of-the-art models, and people want the state-of-the-art models. And so how do they get there? Well, like a part of it is budget. And so like this deal with SpaceX gives them access to the Grok cluster, which is like insanely huge. And maybe by the end of this year, we're going to see like, Cursor is going to take a big swing and take domination in the coding space. Curious, like how do you feel about the news, Ray? You're a big Cursor user, and I want to hear what you think.
I think also from like the low level kind of going on up. So at the conference, when I was listening to Jensen talk and speaking to engineers from NVIDIA and different folks on the floor at GTC, there is like a long tail of optimizations that people still need to do on the latest like Blackwell architecture, and especially in inference land too. And like every single optimization leads to like huge amounts of margins, right? And so there's like that part, which I think their margins are going to go even crazier if you think about it, just from one thing. And so a lot of people are like, oh, they're spending too much. It's like, you don't realize, more engineers sitting down to solve a problem can like lead to hundreds of millions of dollars of, profit. It's kind of insane the return you get on these engineers. But the other part of it, I think, is like the data, right? And so if all of these engineers are going to be doing like math, science problems, those types of problems make coding smarter. The Mythos models, everything that everyone's saying is like as a result of making coding models better. Yeah, you get, more intelligent models. So you're just going to have this crunching of, data from these different inputs. It's going to be, different workflows from coding, but I feel like that's going to be a really important input, plus all these engineers in the feedback loop, plus the talent. I think it's a good move for them. I think this is like,
well, for who? For Cursor or for XAI? Like, I guess both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
money,
hey,
though,
I get to lease a car, and if I like it, I'm just gonna buy it because it's actually gonna get more. And I think that's what's gonna be weird. It's a bubble within a bubble. But I was talking to some friends here in Silicon Valley, totally unrelated here, but like I was like, hey, how is this bubble? And they're just like, it's not as crazy as the dot-com bubble, because the dot-com bubble just seemed to be much more widespread, where this is very, very focused on like very specific columns of engineers and people like that. So it's not like biotech's going crazy here. It's not like all this other stuff's going crazy. It's like, these engineers who are coming in, who have these really unique specialty skills, people who have been in, certain types of, from hardware engineering all the way up the stack. Those are the people who are really valuable, right? As you go up to, because those have larger impacts on the company's bottom line.
Well, I just want to just dive a little bit in this bubble tangent because it's really interesting. So I think one thing that's really crazy is that, like, for one, like the compute, there's no compute, like everything's used, like there's no margin for it. Like what all this money's been spent, like a lot of it's earmarked for future spend, and we'll see if like we grow into that. But like so far, the growth has been so significant with all these coding tools that like there's no more compute. So like it would be crazy if like they came in, they like train everyone to use AI for coding and all this work, they get everyone hooked on these models, and everyone just can't work without them anymore. And then you're like, oh well, then the bubble bursts. Like what? Like when people are gonna go back to coding by hand, or like I don't see that. Like I don't know. So like people are hooked. The drugs are here, and like people are hooked on them. It's crazy. I just want to go back a little bit more onto like the Cursor side of it though, because like I think there's something interesting here. So like and I want to touch on your thoughts too, Adam, but I just wanted to like bring up this point. So, a lot of the Cursor advantage, especially coming in last year, was like they were first mover. They had a lot of the early data. They had like a lot of, an advantage there. And I'm wondering if that's still the case. Like Cursor, they are still very much used, but there's also, Codex is now, I saw last they were at 4 million users, like active users. And, Claude Code is even higher than that. So like they're getting lots of training data there. Is it still the case that like that flywheel is exclusive to Cursor? Is it still like the case that they're as valuable? Like I guess they have like cross model usage, and their harness is really good, and they're very good at using that data to improve. But like I'm curious if the advantage is still what it was. And I also do wonder like what is Cursor bringing to the table for Space? I guess it's like the replacement to their AI coding team, and that could make sense because they have good model talent. But yeah. And what are you thinking, Adam? Like you're still using Cursor, at work. Like what do you think about this deal potentially, and like where Cursor stands in the market right now?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt like this was going to happen. Not this particular deal, but if we go back to like a year and a half ago, as you're looking at like all of these AI agents popping up, we've got this expansion. We're going to talk about another one here shortly, but like there's going to start being a shrinking of competitors in the market. We're going to see, unfortunately, more of these get acquired, most likely kind of being absorbed into existing teams. Now, if we take a look at this particular deal, it's interesting because, the CEO of Cursor said they are limited by compute. One of the reasons that they're doing this deal is for compute, but it also gives SpaceX an opportunity to really acquire Cursor. And it makes me wonder, like, there's definitely a lot of convergence happening with SpaceX buying XAI, now them making this partnership with Cursor, giving Cursor access to their compute, but also with the option to actually go and acquire Cursor at what I would realize is probably a pretty good deal considering the traction that they've got and I'd say the brand power that they've got. So all of this kind of plays down to that the margins are tight. A lot of these companies probably have been burning money left and right. I love that Cursor's pushing on their own models. I worry about the other players in the market, and I think we're going to see some of the other ones either fold in or be purchased or go out of business. And I think this is just like one of the first shoes to drop. I do think SpaceX probably going to end up acquiring Cursor. I think it just makes too much sense for them as a business. I mean, they're a $2 trillion company. We know it's predicted 1.75 trillion. And XAI is already like it needs like that foundation. So I could see the XAI like Grok models getting like forced as like the premier models, Composer joining for like it ends up being like XAI powered Cursor models that are being built out. But
So
I
is
think
the
we're going to see more of
constraint-
this. Yeah, go ahead, go for it.
Is it constrained compute? Like, you think that the existing folks who are or incumbents that are currently there are going to hit the same bottlenecks that the Cursor will eventually?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
100%. Well, think about the amount of put your hat on and imagine you're one of these AI companies that is solely dependent on whatever API availability you can get from OpenAI or Claude, and your margins are razor thin because there's so much competition there. Like you really have a hard time even getting um, the actual cost for it, because I could just go to Klein or one of the open source ones and just pay the API cost. So ideally, you're buying in bulk from these providers at a discount and hopefully selling for what the market price is typically. So your margins are razor thin, and then there becomes like, okay, marketing dollars, headcount dollars, the operational expenses of developing the software that you need. Now the models go up and down. There's issues that happen, like you end up not getting enough compute. There's scaling issues. How do you actually change that? You do what Cursor's doing. You actually have your own models that you can control the cost on. But you are now limited by like, where's your infrastructure? Like, where are you actually going to spend your time to actually train these models? How do you afford to do that? Like, all of it's already taken, to your point, Eric. Like, there's not a lot out there that a company like Droid could go and acquire and be able to train a composer like model very easily. So there's going to be a lot of tension in the AI coding space. There's only going to be a few winners, and I think Google, OpenAI, Anthropic for sure they'll make it. Cursor, I think it's going to get absorbed, and probably as a product will end up being something like XAI branded in the future. The other ones, I don't know where they're going to go. I'm very curious, but I think there's going to be over this year we're going to see a lot more going out of business or a lot more getting acquired and absorbed in.
For Cursor, what's interesting to me is if they do end up in the hands of the XAI SpaceX team, like, we've seen the precedent where Anthropic pulls the plug on access to Anthropic, and I'm pretty sure that they've already pulled the plug from XAI on using Claude. And so, is Cursor valuable without Claude? Like, I guess that's like the bet they're making at the end of the year. I also think though, like a lot of the margin that Anthropic is making is from Cursor because they're paying tokens and like they're paying that margin. So fully disconnecting them is a big thing. So it's a tricky thing for them to decide on. They're freeing up compute, but a lot of revenue. It's a tricky thing, and like that consolidation has consequences, especially for a player like Anthropic, which is very gatekeepery on their access. So I'm curious, like, do you think like Adam that like you would still use Cursor without Claude models in it?
Probably not, personally.
Yeah.
I don't think I would.
Yeah. What about you, Ray?
Same. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I would just probably flip to Droid and like, but it
Fair.
costs more. It's 2x more
Yeah.
inside a Droid. So it's like,
Yeah.
why?
Mm.
I do want to drop some elephant in the room that no one's talking about. And some of the CEOs have said this publicly, and I think Notion's also kind of hitting at this too, is that the conversation is about charging more for certain tokens. And so the concept is like right now, tokens are all kind of pennies right now. It's just like licking them out left and right. But if the output is for like a lawyer, it's going to be like 1,000x more than, certain things. If your economic output is for this code is this, then they're going to charge you that much more. It's the same probably inference costs and everything else, but they're experimenting / toying with these business ideas. So if that is the case, and they're going to want to, I feel like NVIDIA is kind of creating this floor for them saying, hey, here's a marketplace. since we're providing the hardware, use our hardware. But then the more that you optimize and have your engineers work towards providing, agency to use these different capabilities, you get rewarded because now you've done all that hard engineering work to output our tokens that make them more efficient, that don't eat a lot of GPUs. And then you also bear the margins with that too, right? So it's kind of like, would there be more incentive and more players that come into the mix instead of less in that world, right? Because we're just assuming that tokenomics today are going to be the same in 5 years or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we are, but that's the precedent that's been set, and it's hard to change the market dynamics from here. But it's a fact that the current token dynamics are very they're expensive. People are spending a lot of money on tokens. I think if we shift to a model like this, it won't be necessarily to save people money though. And I could see it being more of a squeeze in other markets than coding, especially like you're saying with lawyers and potentially medical professionals or other folks that are using these models in different ways, where maybe they're spending less tokens, but the value they're getting out of them is much higher. I guess we'll see what the market forces bring, and I think this is going to be a competitive space, and if anyone tries to gouge too much, I don't know, we'll see. It depends on how big the model advantages are, but it's going to be crazy. There's a lot of things, a lot of plates spinning, right now. It's going to be hard to see. I want to switch gears a little bit. Well, before we kind of move on to the our last topics there, I just want to make a little acknowledgement. So, Adam, you were a huge proponent of RooCode for a long time, and they just announced that they're no longer supporting the projects. I'm curious, what are you thinking about this? Have you spoken to the team at all about it, or what are you feeling?
Yeah, I conversed with them a little bit on X about it. I'm actually really sad because when I go back in time, it was such a tight knit group of people, a tight knit community. I would say at the forefront of AI assisted engineering. There was a huge percentage of people that didn't even know about AI assisted coding, or even the idea of having a VS extension or any sort of terminal that could actually generate code for you. If people were AI coding at the time, they were copying and pasting into a ChatGPT window and copying out. That was the level that was happening there. And I actually, I had the opportunity to contribute to the RooCode repo, and that was really fun. So I learned a lot about how agents are built, and that served me well going into the company that I ended up founding, and understanding how to build core agent loops and then manage context and all the tooling and stuff around that. And from doing that, I learned more. Built a really good relationship with quite a few people on the team. And I see the decision they're making, because at some point they have to clamp down and make money. But it is sad. It is sad that, I think Kilo Code and Klein are going to try to take on the RooCode.
Well, are they? My understanding is Kilo is kind of gone all in on open code now.
They have,
forking that, so I don't know what they're kind of pulling from the Roo side.
Yeah, they still are trying to do a marketing push right now to pull in the RooCode customers. You can kind of look on Reddit, some of the posts that they've done related to it. But you're right, they have actually built on open code now. They basically, their message was RooCode will take it from here, I think was kind of the way they worded it. So it's
You mean Kilo or Klein? I think they were mentioning Klein taking over.
Yeah, Klein did that too, but Kilo Code said that same thing. They basically had basically those exact words. But I think the better transition is going to be to Klein, in my opinion, and what that team's trying to do. I still worry long term about the health of these open source coding agents. How are Klein how are they going to sustain a business long term, and are they going to be able to have the revenue to continue supporting it?
I mean, the space has changed so much since they got started. I actually got started with Repo Prompt around the same time that Klein got started, when it was still called Claude Dev. And I remember seeing their progress and their traction, and they got a lot of traction from being open source and free, which I didn't have the benefit of being. But that early time was very different, and there was a lot of gains to be made with clever things to get models to be more reliable, especially with file editing. And I remember talking to the Roo people early on about diff file editing, and we take this for granted now, but there was a time back then in 2024 where the standard practice for editing files with AI was that they would rewrite the whole file because they
Mm-hmm.
weren't like practical at making these small edits. And I had done a lot of work to make that more reliable. It wasn't perfect, but I think like I was doing a pretty good job. And I remember talking a lot about that with the Roo people, and I gave them some pointers on where to look, but I didn't want to kind of like reveal everything I was doing because they were putting it all on GitHub. It's just interesting to see like, you know, people trying different things. And I think those easy wins are kind of washed away now with you know, like the models improvements and post training. But there's still a lot to do. I think harnesses are still very early, and I do want to talk a little bit about that a bit more later. So just to kind of switch on this side of things, actually, for the episode, Adam, you were telling me a little bit about your team and how they're using these models, and how there's not like a clear like this is the right way to kind of go about things. And I want you to tell me a little bit more about that, like indecisiveness around working with models and harnesses, and like what the right way to build is, because I think it's really interesting and kind of represents kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, I actually love this. So maybe thinking about this like holistically across the group of engineers that I work with, everybody is coming in it. Everyone that I know has now acknowledged that AI engineering is here to stay, which is great. Like we were not there, I would even say 6 months ago, but we're there now. And everyone knows that we need to be faster and be able to output more with AI. So now what everybody's trying to do is figure out like what's the best way to do that. So we've got different degrees of effort here. There's one effort where it's like, okay, how do we build very prescriptive workflows to accomplish these known tasks? And we're going to drive AI to go do this one thing really good over and over again, putting the right context in, giving them the directions they need, all the way down to what is the least amount of context that we can put in? What is the minimum number of tools that we need? How do we actually manage this so that the AI can go get the context it needs versus trying to like preload it? And what we found is there's really no right answer. Like what works for one person and what they're doing for their own workflow for a different task or the different way a person likes to work is just very different from one person to another. So where we are right now and where I am right now is I think it's very individual. It's like what works for you and how you like to work as an individual. You should just go with that. And I think companies have to optimize around individual like adjustment of people's workflows rather than a prescriptive, hey, everyone on the team needs to work this way now.
Yeah.
So that's my general sentiment. But to say to kind of conclude what you were saying before, we don't have a right way. There is no like you are doing it wrong and I'm doing it right. Yes, you've got a ton of MCPs and a ton of rule files and stuff like that, but I can code and get the same outcome, if not, you know, an equal outcome in about the same amount of time. Like there's no like clear winner in the path that we're actually going down right now.
Well, I mean, I think there are like differences. Like if you are sensitive to context, if you are sensitive to like how you're prompting these models, like especially to the point of 4.7 being, you know, a little unwieldy to steer, like there's definitely work to be done in figuring out how to get the best work out of these models. You know, before I share too much of my thoughts on this, I want to hear what are you thinking, Ray, on this like topic of like right and wrong ways of holding the models and the tools? Because I think there's a lot there. I think like philosophically, there's like should there be a right way? Maybe not. But like in practice, like what are you seeing?
Well, right now I've been solo operating, and I'm just trying to think about like my own workflows because I brought somebody on to do some operations stuff. I was like, here's what I'm doing, you know, with my operations. And I was just doing stuff manually and then trying to put the AI in it, and then spun up an OpenClaw and then like started to do that. And then I'm starting to notice that like, I think they were doing it originally just to sort of follow my pattern and flow, and it just wasn't really working for them. And so I was, you know, burning all these tokens. You know, I have all these great documents that no one really reads. They're using AI to summarize them back. And it's like, okay, what was the point of all this, you know? And so I'm at this weird phase right now where I'm actually trying to sort of minimize everything and just write more succinctly and bullet points and just really try to get my own ideas out on paper. And I think that's kind of where I'm at individually. I was just talking to my friend yesterday. I was like, I feel like even my own writing, like I spend more time trying to steer the model than I did if I would have just sit down, write my thoughts for a first draft and then write a second draft. It's like, you know, or I would learn a lot better if I spent 3 hours reading a copywriting book and actually learning how to do the copywriting versus delegating that task or hiring someone to bring that in. But I feel like that 3 hours spent is a better return. And maybe because I've just spent so much time playing with these models and I know all their quirks and I know that that's a ugly that's from this model. Like I spend too much time reading their output that I can smell it and it just doesn't smell good. I think other people probably feel that way, but I'm
Yeah.
kind of I'm not saying that I'm gonna just like throw everything into agentic universe right now. I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like. But as a solo operator right now, um, sort of trying to figure out what still makes it more human for me in terms of like what I'm trying to run for my businesses, and then what is it the stuff that I could just automate like tasks, like oh that's an agentic task, that's a cron job, that's this, and then that's just an agent loop. Let me just spin off an agent and go ahead and do that workflow. So
Yeah.
it's been weird because I'm trying to like balance
Yeah, I
business
mean,
with code. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So to your point, like you're trying to figure out how do you fit this stuff into like the whole part of the business, the whole operation. And I think that is just like even more uncharted territory. Like there's just so much that is not figured out there. The models weren't trained for all of this. Like we're kind of retrofitting them in from code into being a secretary or doing random other things, like there's a lot to figure out there. I think like just in code specifically though, like is there like like a key thing that you're finding, Ray, like where you're like, yeah, like this is like the thing that is most reliable for you, or is it kind of all tied into the whole thing that you're saying?
I love simpler agent loops
Mm-hmm.
that are kind of cron based in some ways. So
Okay.
like setting up monitors to do things and then having data to come back and then a function that does a simple diff that is very reliable and then the agent acting on it. That's it. Like I think it's just the most beautiful thing in the world. I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. Those are like the best things.
I think like if you think about the ways people work, like traditionally it's like we have a task, we're sitting there writing code on it. Then we got to the point where we can actually have like agents work on tasks, so we can start doing multiple tasks. Like the next evolution of that in my mind is we need to separate this out so that the work is done before the engineer even looks at it. And that is where my thesis has kind of gone to, is like we need to get to the point where product managers, designers, they can actually initiate agentic loops, like to actually go complete something, and then engineers can pick that up and actually take it to completion. Now, this is an unfortunate thing in that it means we're probably going to get better velocity, but as a coder, there's less of that like joy of actually writing the code, which is a big problem to overcome. But I think that's the way it's going. And so as someone that's writing code daily, typically what I'm doing is I've got 3 or 4 agents running, some of them doing bigger tasks, some of them doing smaller tasks. I usually have like my Claude desktop app open that I'm using to kind of chat with, or I'll use Gemini to kind of conversate with. But it is all about like parallelizing work. And each of those tasks require a very different kind of tool set to do it. So not all of them are conducive to going through plan mode and cursor, doing the sub-agent approach, executing. Some of them might be literally telling Claude in Claude Code to go do a particular thing because it's a small enough task. So I think it just all depends. But I do see the future being bigger orchestration loops, letting things happen from like a task board. It gets picked up by AI. The loop happens. It self-evaluates itself. It makes sure everything's good. It stages it up. It has a place that a designer could actually go and click on a deployed version of the application and be like, yeah, that looks great. I like the way that is, or I don't. And they can iterate on it. That's how we get some of the speed improvements I think we need to go to.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because like what you kind of described is a little bit of how I've like shifted my own work. Like granted, I am like also solo, but like, in the work that I've been doing with Repo Prompt, I recently shipped a orchestration mode. And the way that I've been using it has just completely changed how I code with models now. To the point of Opus 4.7 being hard to steer, I think a lot of that is mitigated if I'm not the one prompting it. And instead I'm asking GPT to prompt it. So like the way that I have it set up is that there's like a skill like workflow, and it directs the models to use my specialized sub-agent tools. And what's crazy is like I can have like a Codex main agent, a Claude sub agent that's running in Claude Code. I could have like a Cursor Explore agent if I wanted to use Composer. I could have a Gemini design agent if I wanted to kind of critique that. Like it supports all of them via like ACP and the different stuff. So There's these different model presets, you know, for design, exploration, engineering, and all that work. And I just talk to the main model and say, hey, like, here's what I need to do. It takes care of like running an agent to understand the code base, map it. It has a dedicated model to do analysis and then decomposes the work. And I'm just talking to this agent and being like, hey, let's queue up this work. And it's like my like task tracker, and it delegates work as it needs very efficiently. I can interrupt it. It can come back and kind of say, okay, or add requirements on demand and steer the models as they're working, check on them as they're working. I've had reports of people spinning up Claudes, and sometimes the Claudes spin out and start doing things that are no good. The master agent will stop it, kill it, and say, no, start a new one and say, like, let's redirect it, all on its own. And it's validating its work as it goes. Like this
What's
whole
your
flow
model
is crazy.
hierarchy that you
Yeah.
tend to float back to? Because
Yeah.
that's something
Yeah.
I'm going to be digging into a little bit more. Like, what's your like orchestrator plus what other
Yeah.
things you prefer? Yeah.
I mean, so right now I've got like the Codex $200 plan and the Claude $200 plan. So because I've got like all these tokens to burn, I'm like kind of going a bit ham. But at the same time, the setup with this workflow is so efficient because of how it delegates work, and like each context window is so well like curated that like it's actually not even anywhere near hitting any of the limits, which is crazy. But to your point, like what I'm using is I really like Opus, 4.6 or 4.7 to do exploration. I really like. I recommend Sonnet Hive for like people being reasonable, but that's like like if you're gonna have tokens to burn, Opus is great. My main agent that I talk to is GPT 5.4, and then I delegate work to GPT 5.4 as the main primary like backend main worker. I have a dedicated design agent that is Opus on latest, like the Opus 4.7. And then that one is in charge of like doing design reviews or doing UI work. And then there's like a cheaper engineer model, which I set to Codex 5.3 on Medium. So like if there's a simple task, Codex will just do that. And so this way, like you're like load balancing between the plans. You're like load balancing between what task needs what. And the workflow already specifies when to divide what kind of work. So I don't have to do any of that micromanaging. I just tell the model, let's get this work done. It deals with it, and it's generally like really solid. Like the quality has gone way up. I'm able to tackle like really large refactors that just work. Each of the pieces are really doing a lot of validation. It's insane, like how much more productive I've been since I got this out. Kind of nuts. Yeah. I think like we're gonna see more and more, I think, of this kind of delegation work, orchestration. I think there's from what I've done with it, like I've noticed that the harnesses right now, the tools they have for managing subagents are really lacking, because this micromanaging is kind of not super doable. A lot of them will just have like fire and forget subagents, but you need subagents that are kind of persistent, that can kind of keep doing work, that the models can kind of keep prompting. I think there's a lot there.
I think
but
you're pulling on a cool thread, because
Yeah.
I've only
Agreed.
seen this in a specific mode, like in
Yeah.
Droid with like missions
Yes.
or like other apps that, like try to pull them together. But most of the part, these people are just staying in their own silos.
Yes.
Like there are these advantages with these different models. And I love that you're natively actually just filling it in, and it sort of sorts itself out. I'm super curious now. I can't wait.
Yeah. And I mean, I've set it up to auto default all the models with my preferences too. So like you just kind of pull it up, connect your CLIs, that it's just all configured. You just prompt it and it works. So there's like a lot of complexity I was describing, but all of that's hidden away when you use it, which is, I think, was good work there. Well,
What's really cool about that is it's very similar to a theory that I had like, I don't know, 12 months ago, honestly, that I tried to build with RooCode, which is very much that same orchestrator level. My concept behind it was, and it's somewhat coming true, is that AI is going to continue to get more expensive, but you don't need the best model to do the simple task. Like I don't need the model with all the world's intelligence to change the color of a button. That was kind of my premise behind it.
Yeah.
So the challenge that I ran into, which it sounds like you've overcome a little bit, is the context passing that has to go between all the different subagents, and being able to get each of the subagents to understand where we are in the series of work that needs to happen.
Well, so I think that the way to kind of overcome that is like two ways. Like one is if you have like a dedicated plan file that gets written to, like that the main agent passes around, like that's like a super helpful anchor. But the second thing is just that I don't think like 6 months ago we were there with models being able to orchestrate. But I think with GPT 5.4, like it's gotten to a point where the models are able to keep track of the goals, keep track of all your steering, and keep the models on track with like the work, and they're able to follow the workflow and loop over it and just keep going, and they compact well, so like even after a compaction 5.4 can keep going and keep running this loop. But generally it doesn't compact because it's very lean on what it's doing and delegating this work to other agents. But I tried running this with 4.7 and it wasn't doing a great job, to be honest. Like spinning up threads and keeping track of them and waiting. So I wasn't super impressed with 4.7, and that's why I like GPT a lot for this work. But I think like a lot of the problems are around the tools and the efficiency of the tools and the managing of agent threads. Like I think there's just not been enough work done there, and that I think I put in the work to make work. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with my
Sounds
workflow.
awesome. Sounds like I need to go load that up.
Yeah,
I need to get a Mac.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like Ray, you've got one, so you got to let me know what you think, because I want to see how it can tackle your work. Yeah,
I got a Mac Mini, and then next I'm just gonna be texting over Telegram plans.
Yeah.
And it's just gonna, do its thing.
Well, the thing that I've got crazy with this too is that like the tool to start the orchestrator is available over CLI and MCP, so you can actually have like your claw like just talk to it and like start the work and just have the orchestrator run.
I'm
and
just
you
gonna
can
have a
check in
fish
on
tank.
it.
And it's just going to be the Mac Mini with repo prompt just running, and you just see these little like
your claw's just checking in on the orchestrators and telling you what's going on. It's nuts, honestly. All right, cool. I think this is probably a good place to stop. We've gone over time a little bit today. Thanks for giving me a little space to talk about that. I think I'm really excited about it. I think it's been doing incredible work for myself, but my community has been thriving over it, and it's been great. So lots coming out in the pipe. I don't think we've seen the last of these new models, and it's gonna probably be another busy couple of weeks, I'm sure. So we'll see what happens. And thanks for tuning in, everyone. Any closing thoughts, Adam, for today?
Nope. Just leave comments below. I love reading through it, hearing what you guys are trying. So also, if you haven't, subscribe and follow on the regular podcasting channels like Apple and Spotify. Those help a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And what about you, Ray? What do you got to say?
Yeah, just thanking everyone for following us along this journey. I think everyone, if you're listening to this, you're probably still early to this. Right? Still, it kind of feels like you're falling behind, but please don't feel that way. I think we all feel that way as well. And this is a unexplored territory, and it's part of the reason why we just started having these discussions. And it's just really nice to sit down and catch up a little bit for a couple of weeks and just see what's been happening in the space. And we encourage everyone else to do the same. And be thoughtful when you're in the comments as well. And I think it's more about like encouraging others to grow, and encouraging others to lift each other up, because there is a new paradigm that is here with AI, and I think we're trying to leverage it in all of our different ways. And people are coming up with discoveries and seeing new cool stuff, and we're just going to continue to see more. And just an exciting time to be around. So I'm really happy that you're able to join us. Obviously, share it with a friend. Super helpful here. 5-star review all over the place is actually going to be really helpful. And we're trying to notch it up to the #1 podcast in the world.
At least the AI category.
Yeah, in the AI.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Later, everybody.